The European Union overrides France as it gives the go-ahead to a huge trade deal with the South American bloc Mercosur. The deal was in the making for more than 25 years. EU views it as crucial for boosting the continent's exports. Apart from France, Ireland, Poland and Hungary also voted against this pact. And storms pummeled the UK, France and Germany, leaving thousands of people without power. Britain says train services will be hit over the next 2 days. Schools have been shut across Scotland as well as the northern parts of France and Germany.
Problem, I must say.
They need it and we have it.
So close, yet so far. That sums up the India-US trade deal. We've had multiple rounds of talks, multiple concessions, yet there is no deal on the table. Or was there? Was there a deal that did not materialize? The US Commerce Secretary has dropped a bombshell. He says a US-India deal had been negotiated and the draft and the terms were all set. Then what happened? Apparently, the US wanted Prime Minister Narendra Modi to call President Donald Trump because Trump likes to close deals himself. According to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, India refused. Listen to this.
What I would do is I would negotiate the contracts and set the whole deal up. But let's be clear, it's his deal. Okay, he's the closer, he does the deal. So I said, you got to have Modi, it's all set up, you have to have Modi call the president. They were uncomfortable doing it, so Modi didn't call.
He says India was uncomfortable speaking to Trump. And why is India saying that? Well, New Delhi is calling it an inaccurate characterization.
India and the United States were committed to negotiating a bilateral trade agreement with the US as far back as 13th of February last year, that is. Since then, two sides have held multiple rounds of negotiations to arrive at a balanced and mutually beneficial trade agreement. On several occasions, we have been close to a deal. The characterization of these discussions in the reported remarks is not accurate.
First, let's build a timeline. When did this allegedly happen? Lutnick says he offered the deal to India on a Friday, and the following week he struck a series of other deals with Vietnam, Indonesia and the Philippines. But here's the problem with this. The Vietnam deal was announced on 2nd July, the Indonesia deal on the 15th of July and the Philippines deal on the 22nd of July, basically in 3 different weeks. So the exact date of the offer is not clear, but most likely it was in late June or July. Secondly, what was the offer? Lutnick says it was between the UK and Vietnam rates. The US offered 10% tariffs to the UK and they offered 20% tariffs to Vietnam. So the rate offered to India was somewhere in between. And this is where things get interesting. Howard Lutnick says India did not take the deal initially, but after the Southeast Asian deals, New Delhi made a U-turn. They agreed to the old terms and tariffs. And how did the US respond? Again, the Commerce Secretary said this.
And then India calls back and says, oh, okay, we were ready. I said, ready for what? You know, it was like 3 weeks later. I go, are you ready for the train that left the station 3 weeks ago? And they say, but you agreed. And I said, then not now.
So the US rejected it. If true, this is extremely strange because it reveals a problematic way of negotiating. Trade deals do not just depend on when you started negotiating, they depend on more important factors, or they should depend on more important factors like what goods do you trade in, how big the trade is, how important the partner is. And these factors do not change from time to time. They remain the same in July, in September, and even now. So the US argument is frankly mind-boggling. If you move fast, you get a good deal. If you're late, you get a bad deal. That's essentially what Howard Lutnick said. And frankly, it's also disingenuous. Washington struck a trade deal with Europe on the 27th of July, which is after the Southeast Asian deals. Yet they offered the Europeans lower tariffs. If they could offer that to Europe, why not India? Honestly, this looks like an ego issue. Trump wanted Prime Minister Modi to call him personally. He wanted the pleasure of closing the deal himself. He wanted to be the one announcing it to the world. And why did Prime Minister Modi say no? Well, we can think of several reasons. For starters, this was a period of rising friction. Trump was repeatedly wading into the Pakistan issue. He claimed credit for ending the India-Pakistan conflict, something that India had rejected. So maybe the Indian Prime Minister was reluctant to have a conversation. And we saw that in late June as well. Prime Minister Modi had traveled to Canada for the G7 summit. While there, Trump invited him to drop by in Washington. It was an invite that Prime Minister Modi turned down. So that's one possibility. Or maybe the deal simply wasn't good enough. And frankly, at this point, the reason is not relevant. What is relevant is Donald Trump's approach. It is built on speed, ego, and public pressure. It's a bad faith negotiation. The question is, what happens next? Unfortunately, the trajectory is not good. The US Congress is preparing a new tariff legislation. It will impose 500% tariffs on countries buying Russian energy. Trump has apparently approved this proposal, so if the Congress passes it, India could face 500% tariffs. That's essentially an embargo. And this will have a domino effect. Because India is simultaneously negotiating trade deals with Europe, ASEAN, and some Gulf states. The idea is to diversify exports away from the United States. But here's the problem. A 500% US tariff would weaken India's hand. Other countries will feel that New Delhi is desperate, so their demands may suddenly grow. Like I said, it's not a good trajectory. For now, there are some key developments to watch out for. One is the Russia tariff bill, the 500% tariff bill, and the other is a US Supreme Court verdict. Both are shaking up Indian markets. So the trade impasse continues. Comments from Trump's team are rattling investors, and the impact is already visible. Look at the Indian markets. Through the week, losses have piled up day after day. Over the past 5 trading sessions, the Sensex alone has shed more than 2,000 points. The Sensex tracks India's top 30 stocks. This week, it fell by more than 2%. Same with the Nifty. The Nifty tracks India's top 50 companies. It has slipped below the 26,000 mark. So what does that mean in real terms? It means that the investor wealth has taken a serious hit. At least 8 lakh crore rupees were wiped out this week. That's well over $80 billion. All of it gone in a matter of 1 week. And why did this happen? One major factor is the trade deal with the US. It is weighing on the minds of investors. They don't want to see an impasse because it makes the investing environment unpredictable and risky. And the exodus of foreign investors is not helping. Consider these numbers. Right at the start of the year, global investors pulled out more than 7,500 crores from Indian stocks. That's more than $840 million. And these numbers are from the 1st and 2nd of January 2026. So the first 2 trading sessions of the year. And it comes on the back of record exits in 2025. Last year, foreign investors withdrew 1.66 lakh crore rupees. That's over $18 billion. It's the largest annual outflow on record. And in 2026, the trend continues so far. Foreign investors are relocating their money, and it is probably because of the trade impasse. So Monday will be critical. That's because of what's happening in Washington later this evening. The US Supreme Court is expected to rule on the Trump tariffs. The court will decide whether the tariffs are legal or not. And we told you about this yesterday. Trump's tariffs are facing a legal challenge. At the center of this fight is an emergency law. It's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This law was written for crises, like wars or terror threats and national security emergencies. This law gives the US president special powers. He can issue orders without going to the US Congress for approval. But Trump used this law to impose tariffs, and he presented America's trade situation as a crisis to impose sweeping tariffs using the emergency law. The question is, can he do that? Is it legal? Can the president invoke emergency powers to fix America's trade deficits? That is what the US Supreme Court must decide on. Can the president use emergency powers to levy tariffs without lawmakers signing off on the policy? If the Supreme Court rules in Trump's favor, then the tariffs will stay. But if the court says that this is illegal, then Trump's tariffs could collapse overnight. This would upend Trump's trade policy and derail months of negotiations, including possibly the trade deals that he has struck so far. The bigger problem for Washington would be the financial fallout. And yesterday we told you how companies had filed more than 1,000 lawsuits. They have paid the US government some $150 billion so far. They were charged this money in tariffs. The companies were charged this money in tariffs. So now if the tariffs are struck down, the US government may have to refund that money. Although that refund will not be automatic, businesses will have to fight for them in courts. And that is why they filed more than 1,000 lawsuits in anticipation of recovering their money. Although experts are skeptical, they fear if Trump loses the legal battle, he could make it harder for importers to claim refunds by creating new hurdles or dragging the court cases. And all this only adds to the uncertainty that the markets already face. Yes, if Trump loses the Supreme Court fight, Indian markets could potentially bounce back, but Trump is unlikely to give up so quickly. He may not retreat. Instead, he could change course. And that's the risk that investors need to plan for. In Iran, the crisis is spiraling. The protests are swelling with calls for ousting the dictator, and the crackdown is intensifying, complete with an internet blackout. It is day 13 of the protest. What started as an agitation against the collapse of the economy now threatens the Islamic Republic, the regime itself. Take a look at this first.
پایین آوردن پرچم مشهد تبرسی 17 دیما جاوید شاه.
This happened on Thursday. Protesters ripped apart the flag of Iran. First they brought it down, then they tore it apart. It shows you the anger and frustration of the public. Many even chanted death to the dictator. Then the same night, Iran went offline. The country plunged into an internet blackout. There was no official reason why, but it's not so hard to figure out because Iran has seen this before. The government has blocked the internet in the past, especially during protests. But this time, even a blackout could not stop the people. Videos of the unrest continue to emerge from Iran. They show massive demonstrations with protesters burning vehicles. According to the state TV, the shrine of a religious leader was vandalized. Protesters even toppled the statue of Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani was the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the IRG, and a much revered leader in Iran. He was killed by a US strike a few years ago, but he still remains a looming presence in the country, and now even his statues face the wrath of the Iranian people. So is this shaking the regime? Tehran is approaching this cautiously, showing both sympathy and sternness. At first, the government tried to negotiate with the protesters. There was talk of subsidies and economic relief from the government. But then the position of the regime hardened. They started cracking down. Iran's police clashed with the protesters. There are no official numbers on the casualties, but reports suggest 45 people have been killed, including children. 45 people killed. Iran's supreme leader has slammed the protests. That is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Just hours ago, he delivered a speech on state TV. He slammed the so-called vandals, and he said the regime won't back down.
It does not act as a laborer for the foreigners. Whoever you want to be, if you become a foreign worker and you work for the foreigners, the people will recognize you. The Islamic system will recognize and respect you. He is sitting there and talking about everything in the world, and he knows that usually the religious leaders and leaders of the world from the tribe of Pharaoh, Nimrod, Reza Khan, and all of Reza and the like, when they were at the peak of pride, they were overthrown.
There are two foreign powers he mentions. One is obviously US President Donald Trump. Trump has been threatening Iran. He says the US will intervene if Tehran kills protesters.
Though there's been protesters killed in Iran, you said we were locked and loaded, ready to go. What is the line there for when the U.S. is going to get involved in those protests?
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Yesterday, he reiterated that. He warned of severe action against Iran. The second leader the Ayatollah mentioned is Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince of Iran. He is the son of Iran's last Shah. Reza Pahlavi fled the country after the 1979 revolution. He has not returned since, but now he is calling for nationwide demonstrations. So Trump warns of action. The regime remains defiant, and the Shah is trying to take advantage of the situation. But what does this mean for Iran? The protests began over the economic crisis. Iran's economy is plunging, its currency is collapsing, and the people are not happy. For nearly 2 weeks, the unrest has swept through every corner of the Islamic Republic. Streets, universities, markets, small towns, big cities. And amid this chaos, unconfirmed reports and rumors are swirling, like stories about Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. He is currently in Lebanon. Now, on paper, it's an official visit, but reports suggest that he is traveling with his family and that he will be staying in Lebanon for some time. At a time like this visit does not inspire confidence, the visit with his family. Earlier this week, reports said that the Ayatollah may flee. He may flee to Moscow if the situation worsens. Now, these are most likely just rumors, but they are fanning the fire in Iran. The question is this the end of Iran's leadership? And the honest answer is, it's complicated. History says authoritarian regimes do not fall easily. They fall when the economy collapses beyond repair, when the public loses fear, the security forces hesitate, and the protests sustain momentum. Iran today checks at least 3 out of 4. The economy is in crisis. People are openly defying the police. The protests are decentralized, making it harder to crush at once, and the government looks more cautious. But two major factors remain unclear. Will the protests grow even bigger? And will the military refuse orders? That is not clear yet. The people have shown their anger. What remains to be seen is whether the regime can survive this.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
And I'm going to begin, I don't know with whom, because both sides are quick to pull the trigger of fake news. So I don't know who to begin with. Should I begin with the Americans? Should I bring in the Congress Party? Who do I bring in, viewers? I wish I could toss the coin on this show, but let me try the Americans, because as you know, they might have a modicum of self-respect still hanging somewhere in the air, given the fact that now they've had to come out and concede that Modi is not the supplicating kind. Now, David Sofair, we like you here in India, and I'm not going to, at any level, try to pigeonhole you. You're already in a little box. But let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
So we were told that we were going to come saying sorry What's happened there? America overreached, America is ineffective, Trump is not this great guy, no one's scared of him, at least no one in India. You can boss around Venezuela and some, illegitimate dictator there, but you can't mess with Modi. That's what we're saying, and that's what you're conceding. So you got it wrong. Did you not get it wrong? You have an over-exaggerated sense of self. Yes or no?
That's great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And that was a very charming way to frame the panel, of course, as usual. So right here, we're not focused on fake news. We're focused about what's happening right here today in the United States of America. And what's happening is very interesting. What the Indians have is a significant hurdle that they have to make an important decision if they are going to continue to trade with Russia. Now, what's happening there is, viewers, we need to see this as not a tariff, but this is really a sanction that the West is conducting to really quell the bulls by the horn. So that's what we have here, to really just switch off the Russian war machine. So, and our administration, we come in hot and heavy, but there's a deal to be made, and those deals happen in real time. In this instance, is really for the sake of peace by strength and democracy, which we're huge fans of here. And we are cleaning up a lot of the world's problems, and this is no different. So it's a big decision for cheap oil and all that kind of trade, or a weaker Russia, etc. So it's been a very interesting week, especially with your great friends.
You're being so dilatory.
Your big trading partners there.
You're being so dilatory.
The loss of your compatriot Maduro. I know how close your network is with his government and the Venezuelans. So I'll pass it back over to you.
Well, you're being so dilatory. I don't blame you, David Sofair. You're looking a little diminished. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm just talking about America. Looking so diminished, viewers. There was a bravado, wasn't there, Dr. Ranganathan? They will be sorry. They will come sorry. They will say sorry to us. Wow. We will come in like, one of those four-legged canines with their tails tucked between their legs to say sorry to Master Trump. Has that happened? And David Sofair says, we need to make a choice. Do we really need to make a choice? Do you know the numbers on our economy right now? I'm not trying to be, viewers, in any way. I'm not trying to brag here, but we have done quite well. And we've shown that maybe just for a while, we don't need the American crutch. Of course, we're not burning the bridges. We're not like that. We're sensible people, aren't we, Dr. Ranganathan? We know that we need America. Yeah, we do. We are not saying that we don't, but not on their terms.
No, absolutely. Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, especially my good friend David. He's always a delight to share the panel with. But I have to say this, I don't know how many times David has come to India, but if he does, learn a little bit of colloquium that we have in India. So one of the things that you must learn is yar. That is a sigh of exasperation, which I want to use now towards you, David. Yaar, kya baat kar raha hai? What are you talking about, yaar? The fact of the matter is, do you not realize when you say that India has been slapped with extra tariffs because it was buying...
Let's turn to Venezuela now. It's been almost a week since the U.S. attack, since American special forces kidnapped President Nicolas Maduro. Fortunately, the country has not collapsed. It is tense, but it's not unstable. And a big reason for that is the operation itself. President Donald Trump does not want democracy in Venezuela. He does not care about Maduro or his regime. He just wants the oil. And that's something that Venezuela's acting president also pointed out.
We are an energy powerhouse, we truly are. It has brought us tremendous problems because you all know about the energy greed of the North. And we have denounced it all. The falsehoods about drug trafficking, democracy, and human rights. They were excuses. The real motive was Venezuela's oil.
That's Delcy Rodriguez. She heads a sort of hybrid regime in Caracas. On the ground, she is very much in control. The army, the police, the bureaucracy, all of them remain loyal to her. At the same time, she's not independent because her decisions are being dictated by Donald Trump. And we saw that earlier this week. Venezuela is turning over 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. The US will sell this oil at market price and Donald Trump will control the proceeds. And that was just the start. The US is planning to control Venezuelan oil indefinitely. Listen to what Vice President J.D. Vance said, and I'm quoting, "We control the energy resources and we tell the regime you're allowed to sell the oil so long as you serve America's national interest. You're not allowed to sell it if you can't serve America's national interest." Now, just to be clear, this oil belongs to Venezuela. What J.D. Vance is suggesting is a blatant violation of sovereignty, but I guess we are past that stage. Trump's oil plans cannot materialize without U.S. companies. Many of these companies are wary of investing in Venezuela. They fear backlash and instability. So today, Donald Trump hosted top oil executives at the White House. He wants them to invest $100 billion.
Meet with the biggest oil people in the world. They're all coming here. The top 14 companies are coming here. They're going to go in. They're going to rebuild the whole oil infrastructure. They're going to spend at least $100 billion.
All of this depends on stability in Venezuela, on Delcy Rodriguez playing ball with Donald Trump. Until now, she has given some concessions. The regime has even started freeing political prisoners. Reports say up to 1,000 activists and leaders are in jail. A number of them are being freed by Caracas. Delcy Rodriguez is not doing this out of free will, of course. She is under pressure from US President Trump. He threatened more attacks unless she cooperated. But here's the thing. Is Trump in a position to launch more attacks? Yesterday, the US Senate voted to restrict him. They passed a law to stop Donald Trump from striking Venezuela again. Obviously, Trump will never sign this law, but the vote itself is a strong criticism. Plus, his own voter base won't tolerate more adventures. Trump's MAGA camp has always opposed foreign intervention. Even some in his own cabinet do not like it. For example, Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard serves as the Director of National Intelligence. On paper, she should have been closely involved in the capture of Maduro. But reports say she was kept out of the operation. Apparently, her designation became a joke. Some officials said DNI, Director of National Intelligence, now stood for Do Not Invite. So my point is, even Trump has limits. Look at his social media post today. I'm quoting, "Because of Venezuela's cooperation, I have cancelled the previously expected second wave of attacks, which looks like it will not be needed." Will this embolden Venezuela to shake off Trump's influence, or will they keep humoring him? That's one question to watch out for. Equally important is Trump's next possible target. Greenland is the obvious one. It's an autonomous region under Denmark. But Trump says he needs Greenland for national security. The White House has even said that military operations are on the table. Though first, they're looking at other means. For instance, bribing Greenlanders, basically paying them to break away from Denmark. Now, Greenland has around 57,000 people. The proposal is to pay between $10,000 to $100,000 per person. So the whole thing would cost $6 billion to the US. Next week will be crucial for Greenland's future. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will meet Danish officials. That meeting will give us more insights. Meanwhile, down south, Mexico is also worried. Trump is hinting at attacking them as well.
We've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by water, and we are going to start now hitting land with regard to the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico. It's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country.
Elsewhere, preparations are underway. In Colombia, the top rebel leader has summoned his commanders. He says the US is now a common enemy. For the government and the rebels, the US is a common enemy. That's what he said. In Brazil, security forces are being rushed to the Venezuela border. They are bracing for a possible spillover. I guess this is the new Donro doctrine of Donald Trump, an atmosphere of fear, chaos, and violence in the Western Hemisphere. All this chaos leads to a larger question. What is happening to the world order? Is it being ripped apart? Is it being reshaped? Or is this just a phase? What's happening now is not unprecedented. World powers have always disregarded international law. The difference? How Donald Trump is phrasing it. There is no pretense of following the law. There is no excuse for justification. Trump is owning his violations and recklessness. Look at his recent comments in an interview.
I don't need international law. I'm not looking to hurt people. Yeah, there is one thing. My own morality. My own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me.
So Trump says international law cannot restrict him. Then what can? His own morality, according to Donald Trump. This is a man who's been convicted of financial fraud. He tried to steal an election that he lost. I don't think his morality should be a benchmark for anything. Having said that, this is the new reality. If Trump wants Venezuela's oil, he will take it. If Trump wants Greenland, he will take it. Some leaders have criticized this new equation, like French President Emmanuel Macron.
We are evolving into a world of great powers with a real temptation to divide the world amongst themselves. The United States is an established power, but one that is gradually turning away from some of its allies and freeing itself from the international rules it was still promoting until recently.
So what's the way forward? Macron wants us to reinvest in multilateralism. He wants us to double down on the United Nations. I don't think Macron will find many takers. The UN stock is at its lowest in decades. They couldn't stop the war in Ukraine. They could not stop Israel's war in Gaza. They could not stop the US attack on Venezuela. And they certainly cannot do anything about Greenland, the United Nations. Do you know why? Because the UN was built on two assumptions. One, that world powers would act responsibly. And two, that globalization would unite the world. Both assumptions were wrong. We are seeing the world fracture into many pieces. The US is one piece. Europe used to be part of that same piece, but Washington kicked them out. China is one piece. Russia and Iran are aligned to that piece. Middle powers like India are a different piece. And all of them are floating around with different interests. This is not a new order. It's a churn before the new order. And frankly, it was inevitable. In recent years, the US has been a declining power. Meanwhile, Asian countries surged ahead. They had a younger population and more resources. And the result was this. Many countries began challenging America, whether that's Russia invading Ukraine or China militarizing the Indo-Pacific or the BRICS moving away from the US dollar. All of this was a direct attack on the US-led world order. But then came Donald Trump, sort of like a final flare from a dying star. Trump is trying to reassert US dominance. That is why he captured Maduro, and that is why he wants Greenland. But how much further can he go? Can he truly revive the US-led order? The answer is no, because the other pieces won't allow it. Consider trade and the dollar. Russia settles 95% of its trade with India and China in local currencies, not the US dollar. China settles 33% of its total trade in local currency. Why would they go back to the US dollar? Also, this project is not slowing down. It is gathering pace. For example, the BRICS group. This group is expanding. It began with 4 members in the year 2009. Today it has 11 members. Meaning more and more countries are joining this project. They want to reduce their dependence on the United States. The question is, will this lead to a clash? President Macron addressed this too. He said BRICS should not be anti-US or anti-G7. At the same time, he said the G7 should not be anti-China or anti-BRICS. But how do you ensure that? Macron suggested India could be a bridge.
We should fight against the fragmentation of the world. G7 should not be an anti-China club or an anti-BRICS group. BRICS can't be an anti-G7 group. India can create bridges in order to build cooperation.
Macron is making a key assumption here, that this new order is settled. You'll have the Western G7 on one side, you'll have the China-dominated BRICS on the other, and also floating powers like India. But this is a very far-fetched assumption. For starters, Europe and the US are growing apart. If the US attacks Greenland, it's hard to see that relationship survive. Plus, if the Ukraine war ends, Russia and the US will patch up. So the Western equations can still change. Same in Asia. If China attacks Taiwan, will Trump step in? And if he does not, why would Japan or South Korea trust him? So like I said, this is not a new order. This is the churn before a new order, and Trump did not trigger this churn. He is just making it more violent and more brazen. But what should countries like India do? Simply put, strengthen yourself. Do not depend on America for exports. Do not depend on China for rare earths. Do not depend on Russia for weapons. In this chaotic world, you can only depend on yourself. So the focus must be on national development. Strengthen the economy. Strengthen the military. Invest in technology and science. I'm not saying shut yourself off from the world. I'm saying be prepared for anything. We cannot see what's on the other side of this churn. Maybe it's a stable multilateral order. Maybe it's a new Cold War. The fact is we don't know. And when you face the unknown, you cannot leave anything to chance. The shifting world order is increasing risks for Taiwan. Pressure has been building on the island. In recent weeks, it has intensified. Just before 2025 ended, China launched its largest ever military drills around Taiwan. The United States remains Taiwan's main military and diplomatic backer. They have a mutual defense pact in which the US pledges support if Taiwan is attacked. But that pledge is deliberately vague. It does not spell out how Washington would respond and whether it would deploy troops in the event of an attack, and that ambiguity is by design. It is to deter Beijing without triggering a direct military fight with it. But now Donald Trump has injected doubts about America's commitment. He says it is up to Xi Jinping to decide what he wants to do with Taiwan. So has Trump thrown Taipei under the bus? Here's a report.
The past few weeks have been uneasy for Taiwan. Pressure from China has intensified. Beijing has escalated its campaign against the island. It launched its largest ever military drills. The exercises simulated an attack and a blockade. After that show of force, a clear word of reassurance from the U.S. president could have calmed nerves in Taipei. Instead, Trump chose a different message.
He considers it to be a part of China, and that's up to him what he's going to be doing.
Donald Trump was asked about Taiwan and a possible Chinese military move. His answer stunned many. Trump said Taiwan is considered by Xi Jinping to be part of China, and what happens next is up to him. Trump also said he would be very unhappy if China used force. He hopes that it would not happen, but hope is not policy, and reassurance was notably absent. To make matters worse, Trump said Xi may act after there is a different U.S. president, but not while Trump is in office. That is not deterrence. That is a personal guarantee, and it is fragile. For decades, Washington has relied on strategic ambiguity when it came to Taiwan. It used carefully calibrated language. The statements were designed to deter Beijing without provoking it. Trump's words cut through that ambiguity, and the timing matters. These comments came days after the U.S. captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Trump discussed that operation too. He argued Venezuela posed a real threat to America. But, in the case of Taiwan, there's a difference.
You didn't have people pouring into China. You didn't have drugs pouring into China. You didn't have all of the bad things that we've had. You didn't have the jails of Taiwan opened up and the people pouring into China.
Trump is downplaying the risk from China. Just weeks ago, Beijing conducted live drills around the island. The PLA deployments were significant. 130 aircraft were involved. This included fighters and bombers. In addition to that, Beijing sent 14 military ships and 8 additional official vessels. It was not symbolic. It was a rehearsal, a show of force. U.S. lawmakers were quick to react. A group of lawmakers issued a strong statement. They called the drills intimidation. They warned of attempts to reshape the regional order through force. And they reiterated the United States stands with Taiwan. That message was firm. But it did not come from the president. And that distinction matters, because, in his statement, Trump did not threaten consequences. He did not draw any red lines. Instead, he spoke of personal displeasure and personal confidence, that she would not act while Trump is president. For Beijing, that statement sounds vague. For Taiwan, this is unsettling, because deterrence depends on clarity and consistency in policy. So far, Trump isn't offering any.
Let us now turn to Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. It is no longer just a policy. Rather, it is fueling tensions across the United States. Yesterday, we told you about Minneapolis. A woman there was shot by a federal immigration agent. That shooting sparked protests across the country, and before the anger could settle, it has happened again. Less than 24 hours later, another incident has been reported, this time in Portland. It's a city in the northwest of the United States. Federal agents shot and wounded 2 people in a car. They say the driver tried to weaponize the vehicle, but local officials say they cannot independently verify that version. Once again, protests followed. So 2 days, 2 different cities, but the same story. And amid Trump's immigration crackdown, here's the thing. The US is warning other countries to not target their citizens, to not crack down on them. But it's using force on its own people. The question now is, who warns America? Here's a report.
What did you do?
A woman dies in her car in Minneapolis. By the next day, 2 more people are bleeding in Portland. Different cities, but both involving federal forces. This is not a coincidence. This is the human cost of Donald Trump's immigration crackdown that is fueling tensions in the US. It began in Minneapolis. A 37-year-old woman, Renee Nicole Good, was inside her car. Masked immigration and customs enforcement agents surrounded her vehicle. Video shows her attempting to drive away. Seconds later, an agent opens fire.
They just shot at somebody. This car crashed.
She was killed.
What are you doing here? What did you do?
Federal authorities say she tried to run the officer over. State and city officials dispute that account. They say the facts are still unclear. The shooting happened less than a mile from where George Floyd was killed in 2020. That memory still defines Minneapolis. It explains why anger erupted so quickly. Protests began within hours, and they quickly spread across the country.
I feel like we're at a turning point. I can't say it enough, but you know, things have got to change. But we're coming together, and if any place, it's going to be Minnesota, or like get out of here.
President Trump publicly defended the officer, saying the woman behaved horribly. But when pressed about the issue, Trump reportedly said he does not want to see anyone get shot. Yet, he stood by the shooting. As the streets filled with protesters, something else happened online. AI-generated images of the victim began circulating on social media. Several of those images were created using Grok, the AI chatbot linked to Elon Musk's company, XAI. Some images were sexually explicit, others were misleading. They intensified the outrage and deepened the mistrust. Then came the second incident in Portland. It was 24 hours later. U.S. Border Patrol agents carried out a targeted vehicle stop. An agent fired a shot. A man and a woman were wounded. They drove away from the scene, but they later called for help nearly 2 miles away. Police applied tourniquets and took them to a hospital. Their condition remains unknown. Federal authorities say the driver tried to weaponize his vehicle. Local officials say they cannot independently verify that claim. The incident immediately triggered protests in Portland. Crowds gathered outside the Portland ICE facility as Oregon's governor demanded transparency.
When a president endorses tearing families apart and attempts to govern through fear other than shared values, you foster an environment of lawlessness, recklessness. My message to the federal government is this: we demand transparency.
Authorities are urging calm, but that's difficult to do when in 2 days, 3 civilians have been shot by federal agents. All this comes amid an immigration crackdown ordered by Donald Trump. Trump warns other countries about shooting protesters. But who warns America?
Guys, I'm gonna have his ass back up.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
And I'm going to begin, I don't know with whom, because both sides are quick to pull the trigger of fake news. So I don't know who to begin with. Should I begin with the Americans? Should I bring in the Congress Party? Who do I bring in, viewers? I wish I could toss the coin on this show, but let me try the Americans, because as you know, they might have a modicum of self-respect still hanging somewhere in the air, given the fact that now they've had to come out and concede that Modi is not the supplicating kind. Now, David Sofair, we like you here in India, and I'm not going to, at any level, try to pigeonhole you. You're already in a little box. But let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
So we were told that we were going to come saying sorry. What's happened there? America overreached, America is ineffective, Trump is not this great guy, no one's scared of him, at least no one in India. You can boss around Venezuela and some, illegitimate dictator there, but you can't mess with Modi. That's what we're saying, and that's what you're conceding. So you got it wrong. Did you not get it wrong? You have an over-exaggerated sense of self. Yes or no?
That's great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And that was a very charming way to frame the panel, of course, as usual. So right here, we're not focused on fake news. We're focused about what's happening right here today in the United States of America. And what's happening is very interesting. What the Indians have is a significant hurdle that they have to make an important decision if they are going to continue to trade with Russia. Now, what's happening there is, viewers, we need to see this as not a tariff, but this is really a sanction that the West is conducting to really quell the bulls by the horn. So that's what we have here, to really just switch off the Russian war machine. Mm-hmm. So, and our administration, we come in hot and heavy, but there's a deal to be made, and those deals happen in real time. In this instance, is really for the sake of peace by strength and democracy, which we're huge fans of here. And we are cleaning up a lot of the world's problems, and this is no different. So it's a big decision for cheap oil and all that kind of trade, or a week for Russia, etc. So it's been a very interesting week, especially with You know, you're great friends.
You're being so dilatory.
Venezuela. You know, you're big trading partners there. You know,
you're being so dilatory.
The loss of your compatriot Maduro. I know how close your network is with his government and the Venezuelans. So I'll pass it back over to you.
Well, you're being so dilatory. I don't blame you, David Sofair. You're looking a little diminished. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm just talking about America. Looking so diminished, viewers. There was a bravado, wasn't there, Dr. Ranganathan? You know, they will be sorry. They will come sorry. They will say sorry to us. Wow. We will come in like, you know, one of those four-legged canines with their tails tucked between their legs.
Every week, 230 million people open ChatGPT and ask health questions. Like, why does my back hurt? Is my blood test normal? Does this rash look like it's spreading? 230 million a day. That's more questions than some hospitals see in a month. So OpenAI thought, if people are already asking about health, why not make the answers smarter? And that led to the birth of ChatGPT Health. It's a brand new feature, launched in the US to start with. It allows users to upload their medical records. It allows them to sync their fitness apps. ChatGPT then looks at all of it together. It analyzes the data and the information to give personalized insights. Sounds futuristic, right? It's almost like having an AI doctor in your pocket. But is that really a good thing? Let's break it down for you tonight, the pros and the cons. First, what exactly does it do? Think of it less like Dr. ChatGPT and more like a qualified medical intern. It cannot medically diagnose you, not yet, but it can help you in many ways, like understand your lab results, summarize your complicated medical reports, help you prepare questions for a doctor's visit, offer lifestyle tips, recommend diets and workouts. ChatGPT Health can do all of that. Basically, it can help you connect the dots between your medical history and your daily habits. So what are the pros here? The obvious one is personalization. Instead of generic advice, ChatGPT reads your records and gives you a personalized response tailored to your case and needs. More importantly, it remembers. If your iron was low last, remember that. If your sleep app shows you're not resting, it factors that in. 2. It would mean less Googling and WebMD pages. It helps you decode your medical reports. It helps you prepare the questions. You can ask your doctor things that you may not have understood before or even thought of before. 3, it gives chronic illness support. People who have chronic illnesses, for such people, patterns matter. And AI is ridiculously good at spotting patterns. It can spot patterns in minutes. And that is a benefit. And the last one is convenience. You upload a 12-page medical report and you get a summary in seconds. But it's not all good. Of course, there are the cons, so let's look at those two. The first and the most obvious one is privacy. If you upload your medical records, what happens to them? Will ChatGPT store them? Will it train its models on your data? And remember, health data is a very sensitive subject. Confidentiality is key. And giving it all to an AI bot sounds like a slippery slope. Although ChatGPT says it won't be a problem. Of course, it says that. It says conversations with ChatGPT Health will be stored separately. They won't be used to train AI tools. But still, concerns remain. The second issue is hallucinations. AI can confidently be wrong. ChatGPT is smart, but it also hallucinates. That means it often makes things up. And in healthcare, that can be quite dangerous. The third challenge is regulation. OpenAI avoids diagnosing people, so it does not count as a medical device. That means it does not go through the same strict testing that real medical tools do. And that raises questions about its practices. So AI in healthcare is no longer science fiction. It is already here, analyzing reports, tracking patients, and helping millions of people. The question is not whether AI can do it. Of course it can. The question is, do we have the rules and the framework to let it do this? Because privacy, accuracy, and oversight cannot be optional in healthcare. Real human lives depend on it. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Strong winds tear roofs off buildings in northwestern Turkey. Saints and angels carved from the ice welcome tourists at Russia's Ice Sculpture Festival. And an endangered mountain gorilla gives birth to twins in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2007, Apple CEO Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone. It was Apple's risky move into the mobile phone market. The first iPhone offered a fingertip touchscreen and easy access to the internet. At that time, it was revolutionary, changing the smartphone market forever. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin. The special investigation team probing the Sabarimala gold theft case has arrested the temple's chief priest. The arrest was based on statements given by the prime accused and former Travancore Devasam Board president. The chief priest has been booked under several sections of the BNS. That is the big piece of news that's coming in. To get more details, I'm joined by my colleague Neetu Raghukumar on the broadcast. Neetu, over to you. A huge development coming in when it comes to the gold theft case.
Oh yes, a very huge development, and the arrest of the Tantri, who's the chief priest of the Sabarimala temple, Kantara Rajivara, comes as a huge turn.